morning. It's just coming up to 8:30 AM on Friday the 7th of April, and it's Good Friday today, the start of Easter weekend. So first up, I'd like to wish you all, your friends and your family, a very happy Easter. Or if you're watching this after Easter, which is more probable, hope you and your loved ones had a really good time. I was hoping to do a moving introduction to try out my new wind muffle on the microphone, because I had a lot of wind noise on the last few videos. It appears to be working, but then my face got bleached out by the sun. I'm really excited about today's ride because I'm trying out something a little bit different, and it's somebody else's idea, so let me explain. I like looking around country churches, and I've tended to just do it randomly. Thought, oh, that looks interesting, and I'll go in there sometime, or maybe I'll definitely go there today, or just plotting on a map where I may be passing churches. But I've given it a little bit more structure, so this route is straight from the Churches Conservation Trust website. I was just noodling through their website, actually doing a little bit of random research, and I came across a tab for trails, and I thought, oh, I wonder if there's any cycle trails, and there were. This one is right on my doorstep. It's about 10 miles away, so I'm just riding along the Bath to Bristol cycle track, which runs along the old Midland Railway. I'll be turning off at Saltford, joining the Avon Cycleway, which is an 85-mile loop, which in effect is an orbital route of Bristol. About 6 miles into that, at Publow, I'll be joining this route, which has actually been documented by Helen. I don't know Helen, I've never met her, but she's done a wonderful description of it, including photographs, and there's even a GPX file you can download, which is what I've done. And so I'll put a link to that in the description below. In effect, I think Helen did exactly what I enjoyed doing. Got inspiration from a route which was actually written out in description form on the Churches Conservation Trust website, and just rode round it, and has put this GPX route for all to see, and including the photographs on Komoot. So today I'm just basically following somebody else's route. Helen's done all the work for me. I've never met you, but thank you very much, Helen. Included on this route, there's 2 Churches Conservation Trust properties, but 4 other parish churches, so 6 churches in total. I've made it clear often, on many occasions, I love looking around country churches. Plus, one of them is in a thankful village. Plus, I'm going to be visiting some ancient standing stones. And although I've been there before and I know about them, I didn't realise it's the 3rd best preserved and 3rd largest in the UK. I didn't know that. And also I hope to be ending up at some point in a cosy beer garden. This in effect is a trial run for something, a bigger project we got for later in the year, but more about the why later on. Today I'm just riding around this circuit, as I said, starting out along here to Saltford, turning left, a few miles on the Avon Cycleway, and I'll be joining Helen's route at Publow. Being a circuit, you can join it wherever you want. That's my start and finish point, Publow. I'll see you there. I'm now about to drop down into Publow, which is my preferred start finish point on this circuit. As I said, it's circuit, so you can join it wherever you like. So when I spoke to you last, I was on the Bath to Bristol bicycle track, very close to the River Avon actually. I was next to a bridge going across it. So I left the Avon Valley, climbed over and dropped down into the Chew Valley, and a lot of this route will be snaking up and down the hills of the Chew Valley. But that's quite a monument in front of us. That's Pensford Railway Viaduct. We're going to be going very close to that shortly. That viaduct in fact carried trains from Frome and Radstock that way into Bristol that way, and it was one of those railways that escaped the beating cuts in the 1960s, and then there was some bad floods in the Chew Valley area in 1968. I remember them very well as a young boy, and there was bad damage on that railway, and it was as the cuts were being implemented, all the railways were being lifted, and that one just got sifted into the pile. So the irony is that actually escaped the original beating report, the reshaping of British railways, and then just events forced it into being closed. When we get a bit closer, I'll tell you a fascinating story about that. To the best of my memory anyway, as I recall it, it was up for sale for £1 about 30 years ago. I've just dropped down that steep hill into Publow, making my third crossing of the River Chew so far. This is a delightful spot. Have a look at this. Lady over there. Getting a dog to retrieve some sticks. What a beautiful spot, eh? And that is All Saints Church, Publow, the first of today's 6 churches. Just what a stunning location, look at this. I've been by here many times, never been inside or stopped to have a look around. Don't even know if it's open. We're going to have a look shortly. Community forest path, there's some Commonwealth war graves in here. Wow, just look at this. Just walked up the path to the front of the church, and assuming this is the main door, I'd imagine it would be. There's no entry, it's locked. Let's have a wander around and see what else there is. You can see there's some floodlights there. I've seen it before uplit. That really does give it character as you pass through here at dusk. Oh, there's a seat out in the church side. Oh, this looks like a possibility. Ah, yes. Just been and got my bike. This looks like I may be going through a staff entrance right into the kitchen. I'll see if I can find someone. I think I've got it just before opening actually, but they said it's okay for me to look round, so I will do. Well, I went in the church cautiously, and there was a couple of people in there cleaning and getting it ready for opening. It's just gone 10 AM now, and the third lady's just arrived just to open the front door, so I guess around about 10 AM, and it is open to the public. Somebody did point out to me recently, I was a little bit unaware of it actually, I should be taking my hat or my cap off when I go in churches, so from now on I'm really going to try and do that actually. It just never occurred to me until someone pointed it out, so I made sure I did it in there. The sun's very warm already actually, I think it's going to be a lovely day. And the lady in there just asked me what I was doing. I sort of told her, I was telling the lady in there what I was doing. She sort of said, oh, you'll be coming to Thomas Becket Church next. And I thought, ah yeah, that rings a bell from the guide. She said all that's there is the tower that you can see. The actual church has been converted into a private dwelling, so that's coming up next actually. But hey, what a place to start. There's a seat there down by the river, another one along there. You can see the sort of like the steepness of the valley wall. So I've just come down that way, a steep hill, and then the railway cuts across the valley, or the former railway cuts across the valley on that spectacular viaduct. Wow, this is lovely. All Saints Publow. So just as we join the circuit, and there's a viaduct in the background, we come across this old ancient lockup for naughty people in the old days. I guess rather than physically punishing them, you mentally punish them maybe by locking them in there for a period. There is a very small inlet for air and light, but it's not direct light. You can probably see its curve around leather, so that would be very dark in there. Imagine being locked in there and not told how long before you're going to be released. And ironically, there's a sign on the outside saying the Ancient Monuments Acts 1913 and 1931. Any person who injures or defaces this monument may be fined in order to pay the costs of repairs or be imprisoned inside maybe. Something else here is a seat there dedicated to Acker Bilk, who I believe was born here or lived here. 1929 to 2014. There's the viaduct in the background, and that's the very busy A37 we're going to cross shortly. That's the Bristol that way to Yeovil Road that way. I'm just reading up on the church's conservation trust. I'll call it CCT from now on. And when it describes this route, it says actually the suggested start finish point is just along there, the village hall with the car park, and it mentions you pass this 19th century lockup. Because I normally avoid this A37 road, it can be very busy. I never realised there's actually a post office and a shop here. And then you've got the Pensford Miners Welfare Institute. There's also a coffee shop in there these days. And there's a pub down there and a garage. And there's the imposing viaduct there right behind. This route, you cut right across that main road where the car's just gone from right to left. And you're straight over the River Chew here. On what looks like the old main high street. And there's in effect the A37 bypass there. Lovely little village, but look at this, the church. This river is quite fast flowing at the moment, as you can see, but it's not particularly high. Let me show you something I've just spotted here. Look at that, it tells you the flood level of July the 10th 1968. I referred to that earlier on. Basically people would have been confined to their top floor rooms if they did stay here. When I put this post up on Facebook, my friend Brian said his brother was part of the relief force that came here. He was part of the Royal Engineers at the time that came, I guess, to just sandbag it up and put in bridges and get people in and out of their properties. Here's the church, look. Historic church tower open. Tower room only, no access to the roof. I'll maybe make a donation to the clock repair fund. The Victorian clock face is in urgent need of repair. There you go, that's that diamond shape there, I guess. Looks like you can get access to the clock tower, so let's go and have a look. As you walk through the churchyard, this confirms what the lady was saying back at Publow Church. The main church building is actually private property, so you've got no access there. But the tower is a, gosh, look at that amazing imposing viaduct. Wow, what a backdrop. Let's go and have a look in here at the tower. So this is as far as you get by the look of it. It did say no access to the roof. So you just get the access to the foot of the tower. More guides. And another visitor's book. I'm going to try and sign each visitor's book today actually. As usual, picked up a leaflet or two. I'm going to make a donation. This gives you information about the Churches Conservation Trust churches in Somerset. Near the end of the video, I'll reveal the purpose of this recce today actually. I'm thinking of doing a little adventure later in August, but I'll explain more at the end of the video, but it sort of ties in with that really. The old wooden pulpit by the look of it. This is just such a stunning location. St Thomas a Becket, Pensford. That viaduct, as I said, was closed to traffic in 1968 after the floods. Apparently it was just a cutting which got flooded and they used that as a sort of smoke screen to close the railway, I guess, during the time of cuts. But I did read in a local paper in the 1990s, I believe, that viaduct was up for sale for £1. But there's a catch, as you can imagine. You had to take on the liabilities, because my friend Graham, who used to work for British Rail before it was privatised, told me there is actually still a British Railways company as part of the government which they have to look after and maintain, keep safe. All these old structures like that, that's almost certainly got a preservation order on it now that'll be listed, so there's no way that can be demolished. So they've got all these liabilities which, you know, they try and get rid of, and I guess that £1 offer was one of those. To the best of my knowledge, that offer was never taken up. That's probably still part of British Railways properties which they have to maintain. EasyJet going in, clearly on the flight paths here going into Lowesgate Airport. Anyway, onwards. Turn left at that 19th century lockup just before you would go across or join that A37, and you climb up this minor road parallel to it, and you can see we're coming in above the A37. We're just going to join it for about 500 yards up to a roundabout towards our next church. Probably what I'm going to do is just ride up that pavement, actually avoiding anybody who's going to be walking. You do have to join that busy A37 just about a few hundred yards before you get to a roundabout. Then you turn left, signposted Chelwood and Bath, and this is the road. We're just coming in to Chelwood, our second church, but as you can see it's also a thankful village. The road just S-bends through the village. In fact, when we retrace from this point, we don't even have to go back along the main road. There's a turning off to the left, but there's so much of interest here. This is the village hall, site of the parish school, and there's a plaque here I wanted to show you. Just up a few stairs towards the entrance to the hall, there's the slate centenary plaque marking this as a thankful village. A quick refresh. Thankful village is a number of villages, 54 in total I think, in England and Wales, where every person who went off to serve and fight in the First World War returned safely. The term thankful village was coined by a writer in the 1930s, and some of those thankful villages are actually doubly thankful villages, as by complete coincidence, a nice coincidence as well, everybody who went from that village to fight in the First and the Second World Wars all returned safely alive. So in 2014 I believe, to commemorate the start of the First World War, these slate plaques were situated in each thankful village. Often they're at the church, but not always. I had to come and look for this a few months ago actually. I first of all went to the church, which is right behind me, which is at St Leonards, which is the next church on our itinerary, the third church. You may see it's getting bright already. So just on the other side of the road, behind that building there, you can just see the church stars sticking up above. The weather really seemed to change this week, from wet and windy to nice and sunny, and then back to wet and windy the last couple of days. So we got all our barbecue and our summer tables and seats outside on the patio, and I think it was Tuesday evening we had our first barbecue of the year so far. Lovely. Then 24 hours later we were sat in our kitchen just literally a few yards away, looking through the patio door, and the rain and hail was lashing down on the patio, and just thinking, gosh, we were sat outside there this time last night. Anyway, back to nice weather today, as you can see, and it's supposed to be nice all weekend. Just a few yards on from that village hall and the slate plaque, that would be towards Bath. You turn right up Church Lane appropriately. Here's St Leonard's Church. So easy to drive through this village and just sort of think, oh, there's just a few houses, not much here. But there's quite a bit here actually, including this church. I couldn't get in last time, so I'm not very hopeful for today. I think even the CCT guide says it's unlocked here. It's a lovely location. I'll just show you around quickly. Nice seat at the back. Need to try and get out the sun a little bit actually to stop bleaching all my shots. Very careful I'm not treading on any graves. Beautiful place. Side on view. Although I like looking around churches, I don't really know much about them. I don't know all the terms and the abbreviations. I certainly don't know what that's all about. So if anybody does, please feel free to comment and enlighten me. And then back round to the front. It's quite nice this, because although I'm very close to home and I'm familiar with most of the roads, I don't quite know how this route has been constructed, because it's somebody else's route. So it does feel like, although I'm on familiar territory, I'm not, if that makes sense. I do know now. I was looking at the Garmin route as I came through, so we've just come up this dog leg. I do retrace back on that main road about 50-60 yards, then turn off onto a minor road. So just back to the S-bend, this would be very easy to miss. So what to look out for is the telephone box, then you turn left onto Barn Lane. As you can see, we're back on very quiet roads. I should maybe point out at this stage, when I got to Pensford, that busy junction on the A37, I went across and had a look at the church tower, St Thomas of Becket's, because really, if you followed this route as designed, that should be the last place just before you get back to the start-finish point at the village hall stroke car park. What I'm hoping is the last church I visit will be right by the stone circles at Stanton Drew, and there's a pub garden there that I'd quite like to finish the ride in actually, before I then just retrace back to Pensford and back to Bath. This is really nice, so a bit of shade in this lovely quiet lane, and just following the Garmin. Sort of roughly know where I'm heading, but I don't even know which church is next, to be honest, until I get there. So although I know these lanes quite well, as I said, I'm following somebody else's route, and I just had a quick check at the description of the route to make sure I don't overshoot anything. So the next one we're heading for is St Augustine's Church at Clutton. We're now on these really nice quiet minor roads, and there's nothing complex, but there's a few little turnings. The GPX file sort of navigates you quite well. You can see how green and lush all these hills are. So we've climbed up almost onto the valley wall, then we're going to drop down. In the distance you may see some houses, and there's a bit of a defined line along there. That's the course of the A37. I can just see a few reflections of cars going along in the far distance. So in effect we're paralleling the A37. I'm guessing at some point we're going to have to cross it again. But next stop, dropping down into Clutton. You leave the lanes and then you emerge into the lovely village of Clutton by the Railway Arms. That looks really nice pub. Then the CCT guide says past the school on the right hand side and shortly turn left down Church Lane, and here we are at T-junction, St Augustine Church. I'm guessing the entrance is probably through the car park on that sharp deviation bend. Let's go and have a look. Oh, this is really nice. This is one of those roads and villages I'm so familiar with, and you know what, I've never really noticed there was a church here before. Probably have seen it, to be honest, but I've never really taken any notice. It just shows, I've tried to describe it before, when you ride in familiar areas with a sort of purpose and a theme, it just opens up so much that you sort of pass and take for granted or just don't see. And this is a perfect example. I'm seeing things in a completely different light through fresh eyes. Shame it appears to be locked. I'll read the guide and try and tell you a few facts about this. Oh, there's another gateway there. I wonder if the main entrance is run that side. Let's go and have a look. Very orangey sort of stone. Rear entrance, I don't think that's going to be open. Far distance, that's the lane I came down. Wow, this is nice. You can hear the roar of the A37 in the distance just over the tree line. Can't see it actually. One of the favourite stories I came across when I was doing a Coursera course actually, through a guy called Terry. Now I'm not going to try and pronounce his surname because I'll get it horribly wrong, but he tells this wonderful story about a Nobel Prize winner who didn't spot the blindingly obvious in front of him for many years. If I can find the video, I'll put one of those box links to it up in the top right hand corner now. But you know, the point being, even if really clever, intelligent people sometimes take years or even decades to spot new things that have been staring them in the face for many years, for me that just feels okay for just mere mortals like myself and others to sometimes sort of think, oh, I never knew that before. You know, I've passed it so many times, I'm seeing it in a different light through different eyes, and this is a good example. I honestly couldn't place where this church was. The other ones I had a rough idea, or I'd even been to them before, but this one I was trying to think, where's there a church in Clutton? Well, it's here. Just had a quick read of the route, and there's a really exciting one coming up for me. I've ridden past it before. I've even stopped outside on the way to a camping trip and fancied going in, just didn't really sort of have the time actually. So yes, I'm going to be crossing the A37, joining it very briefly at staggered crossroads, then turning into the village of Cameley, and there's a church along there, and that is a CCT one, and I'm hoping there'll be access there. Just over from Church Square, there's this like convergence of lanes and this little green. Never spotted that before. The King's Oak 1902. It's replaced in 1993. Again, ridden by your hair so many times, going too fast, maybe keen to get on my way somewhere, keen to get home after a long journey. Ridden by that and never seen it before today. So I was travelling at a slower pace, just looking out for things of interest. I'm now at my next church, I think 4 if I'm keeping track right, and this is St James at Cameley, or Camley. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. I tend to say Cameley. Probably going to be in my lunch stop as well, and this is a CCT church I believe, and I think it's open to the public. Yeah, church open, visitors welcome. So I've just come from Clutton, a few miles that way. You left a village on some nice minor roads. You actually approached the A37 at right angles, but you join it at Temple Clouds, so the traffic's calmed anyway, plus the fact there was some roadworks, so it ground it to a halt. This really nice lady flashed me to let me join once the lights went green. And just before I turned right, literally about 200-300 yards along the road, there was a second set of traffic lights, so you know, that really made it sort of feel safe. Anyway, I'm looking forward to going in here. I have stopped here before and looked over the wall, but I've been on my way camping up the Mendip, so I've always wanted to come back this one and go inside and have a look around. When I've looked around inside here, if I can find a seat out in the churchyard in the sun, I'll have my lunch here. If not, literally a mile or so up there, we climb up onto almost like a plateau, Hinton Blewitt. There's a really nice green there, plus the fact it's a nice pub as well, but I know there's a village seat on the green. Anyway, let's go in here. I've been really looking forward to this one. Yes, it's a CCT church, the Churches Conservation Trust, St James Cameley. This church is cared for by the Churches Conservation Trust, the national charity protecting historic churches at risk. Although no longer used for regular worship, our churches remain consecrated and open to all. Every day it's open. Oh, the first thing you get is the drop in temperature, pleasant though, around lunchtime, and that musty smell of old buildings. Oh, there's a booklet as well. I'm leaving donations at each church. Oh, this is nice. Oh, this really does feel historic. Pulpit, I won't be going up there today. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. If it doesn't feel right, I won't, and I just don't feel right here. Wow. This really does feel, smell, taste of history in here. Can't quite put my finger on it, but you just know this is old, historic. So I'm not going to read all of this out, but I'll try and give you a kind of brief summary. It says, why wall paintings? Because they're all around, you can see faded in places. So it says, the traditional view is that church wall paintings served as books for the illiterate, biblical stories and pictures. But there was more to it than that. Wall paintings were both highly decorative and an aid to worship. Brightly coloured images and painted text would have had dramatic impact at the time. And then this one has jumped at me. A jester and St George, says, "The most intriguing of Cameley's wall paintings are situated behind the pulpit. Those of a jester or knave, complete with bells and forked tongue, and of St George on horseback with shields and adornments." Similar medieval imagery is to be found in a number of other English churches, but this depiction of the jester is particularly dramatic. Wow, in today's sort of world of technology and computer graphics and CGI at cinemas, it's hard to imagine that these would have been inspirational in their times. They're very faded. Trying to make out St George and the Jester. Gosh. It's a very colourful church. I said that must have been bright in its day. They're more pastel-y colours now, but it certainly gives the place colour. Oh gosh. Mezzanine. Another one of the wall paintings. Because I'm unsure about the pronunciation, I'm going to switch between Cameley and Cameley. Hopefully that'll please anybody who thinks I've got it wrong. Erected for the free use, I imagine that means, of the inhabitants, 1819. There's these box pews. Local patrons by the look of it. Anne Mogg and Joyce Mogg, 1796 and 1835. I always like to see who the last visitor was, more importantly when. So there was a male today, and before that 2 days ago. Well, it does seem to be quite well visited, this one. Some of the really remote ones, you're the first person there for about 2 weeks, or certainly the first person who's made an entry in the visitors book. This is really nice. I thoroughly recommend a visit here. And let's have a wander around the churchyard. See over there. Oh look, there's one in the sun. I think this is going to be it. This is going to be my lunch stop. Wow, look at that valley across there. Heading up to a good viewpoint shortly actually, but more about that after lunch. As I get myself organised for lunch and recharging devices, I'm just going to take my stuff down there to the seat and then leave the bike there so I can see it. But I've mentioned before, riding long distances, you really have to become self-sufficient, almost like a modern day forager. And one of the things you're always looking for obviously is water. Churches are normally quite a good source actually. Quite often they'll have water taps. This is a thing you clearly want to avoid. You can just see that's coming down. It's a water butt in effect coming down off the gutter. That wouldn't be safe to drink. But quite often it's near the gate, or it's if you look, it's quite often easy to find. There'll be a water tap. I've seen one in each of the churches so far. Anyway, back to the present and lunch. Just sat here, this lovely peaceful location, eating my sandwiches, my lunch, just looking at the church. And the actual tower looks very vertical and upright and straight, but part of the church, the middle part in effect, looks like it's sloping, falling away, actually subsiding. I just noticed one of those steel crosses on the outside. That's where they sort of pin them, isn't it? They stop them collapsing in effect. That does look like it's subsiding. I'm not an engineer, I don't know if that is the case, but it certainly looks to my untrained eye as it may be. Looking at the gargoyles up there as well, whether they're decorative or for getting rid of rainwater, I don't know. Yeah, beautiful location. Just this bird song and just the warmth on my legs and just feeling the sun on my face. It really does feel like the seasons have changed. After I saw that oak tree at the square outside the church at Clutton, it got me thinking actually. King's Oak, it clearly was replaced in the 1990s, maybe through tree disease or damage, I don't know. But The original date 1902, 1903. I imagine it's to mark the coronation of the new king after Queen Victoria's passing. Bertie, the Prince of Wales, Edward, I think it would be, King Edward. And it suddenly made me realise, actually, this is a similar moment in history at the moment, isn't it? The Prince of Wales succeeded his mother, who at the time was the longest serving monarch, and now King Charles, next month is going to be his coronation as he succeeds his mother, who's the longest serving monarch in history. Just seems strange, doesn't it, that I'd never noticed that out before, and I noticed it at this particular moment in history. It's a bit weird, really. Even though I've got a bit of shade from the tree above and behind me, my legs are really warm in the sunshine, so I packed up. I'm going to make my way just a quarter of a mile or so up these final slopes, and then it'll emerge on this sort of plateau at the village of Hinton Blewitt. It's a really nice green there, quite a few roads converge. There's a really nice pub there called the Ring of Bells. I was controller for an Audax there a number of years ago. That was really nice. Spent all afternoon in that pub garden just sort of stamping cards for Audax riders. Helen's route actually does a dog leg there, and I'm going to replicate that as well, copy it, and it just goes along to Prospect Stile. I've been there many times. I've filmed there quite a few times on my videos, so I'm going to go along there, share the view with you. I've just climbed up on this little plateau. I've come in from Cameley that way, and you can see there's a sort of green here where lots of roads sort of merge and go off in different directions. Lovely pub there, Ring of Bells. A bit too early for that. There's a church over there I'm going to go and have a look at, but also go round and show you Prospect Stile. That's the dog leg where we come back afterwards and continue on Helen's route. And here we are at Prospect Stile. Some great views here. Just come along there from the village of Hinton Blewitt. There's roads going off everywhere. The rule of thumb to remember is coming towards here, whenever there's a choice, because they're not signposted, just bear right and you'll eventually get here. As I said, we're up on a kind of plateau, and this is the edge of it. It's about to drop off really steeply, as you can see, looking down on Chew Valley Lake. Just before the Second World War, they started preparing Chew Valley Lake. There used to be a village underneath there, and it's flooded, and when that reservoir goes down in level, as it did a couple of years ago during the drought, last summer in fact, you'll see some of the tall buildings sticking up through, like the church spire. There's 3 lakes in total. It was serving Bristol with fresh water. The work was halted during the Second World War and then recommenced afterwards, and I think they opened in the 1950s. So there's Chew Valley Lake there, Blagdon Lake in the distance. They're quite close to each other. And then round the other side of the Mendips there's a big circular Cheddar reservoir. It does literally look like a circle. And then that's the Mendip Ridge all along there. There's a lovely seat here, the information board telling you all about the different places you're looking at, the viewpoints, a little bit about being on the edge of an AONB. This never used to be here actually. I mean, when I first started cycling, I guess I cycled as a child, and then I really got back into cycling in my 20s, and I've mentioned it before. My mum gave me some money for my 21st birthday, and I used it to put towards a bicycle, a rally steel bike, and I just started cycle touring then, and I didn't really know what I was doing. I'd always loved maps, but I just needed a bit of help on where to go and what to look at, and I had this guide, and it just gave you these suggested routes. None of them were longer than about 30 miles, and you could link them up or just literally ride out and come back. And this is one of the early ones I did. I think I rode to Weston-super-Mare and got the train back, and this viewpoint was just one of the first places I came across. I thought, wow, this is, you know, shows you what the potential of cycling and exploring can offer you, and I've just loved this place ever since. As I just said, I'll be turning back that way, stopping off at the church first. I have been there before, and I've been inside actually on a previous video, but I want to go back, and then I think I'll be going past the pub. In fact, I'm going to read the notes and see what's coming up next. This is the retrace I've just done. See, we're almost back to the village green, and that pub would just be literally round to the left, and here we are at St Margaret's Church. I stopped here before actually, just so I happened to be passing. I had time on my hands, and I was looking for somewhere to eat my lunch out of the cold window, I seem to remember. So I have been here before. Be nice to linger a little bit longer today. Wow, bit Fort Knoxy to get in, look. Enter through the left-hand gate and the left-hand upper, and then the church door by the porch is open. Wow. Yes, I remember this one. It's got a cool feel to it. Lots of light streaming. You've got to look at the bell ropes there coming down from the tower. But it's quite noisy here on a Monday or Tuesday night whenever they do their bell ringing practice. It says here, "Dear bells, how sweet the sound of village bells when on undulating air they swim. Now loud welcomes, faint now as farewells." It's nice. Pulpit's open, so they don't seem to be putting any obstacle in your way. Although I make YouTube videos, you only see what I want you to see. I edit out all the faffs and if I waffle too much, and I try and edit it into some sort of coherency, but the thought of speaking in public absolutely terrifies me. So to be up here raised with all your local village looking up at you expecting some sort of, well, what are they expecting? Solution to all the problems, or inspiration, or forgiveness? I don't know. Just the thought of talking to people, giving the sermon, just absolutely fills me with dread. It's this little wooden ceiling roof above. I imagine that's for acoustics, to sort of bounce the sound off and force it out of the congregation. A friend of mine I used to ride with, she was a lecturer, and I told her about my dread of speaking in public. How do you manage it? She just said, you just get used to it. Nervous the first few times, learn from your mistakes, and after a while, just part of your job. Although it's right next to a pub, easily accessible, I'm the first person visiting here today. Before that, it was the 17th of March. I'm not saying first person visiting, but first person who've signed the visitor's book. Back at that last church, a couple came in and started tending graves. Had a little bit of a chat with them, and then as I was leaving, a runner had come in. So clearly it's a well-visited church, that last one. Anyway, I'm going to sign my name in here, put a few comments. So I've tried to describe what I'm doing in these visitors' books. Who knows, it might just point other people in that direction. Maybe not to cycle, but just, to recognise it's the Churches Conservation Trust website that sort of gave me the idea. And as I sort of said, Helen, bless her, has done all the work for me, really, producing the route. I think now might be a good time to explain what I've been referring to through this video. And one of the reasons for today's trip, several reasons really, I really wanted to enjoy Good Friday, and as soon as I saw this route I knew I wanted to ride it. Anyway, when I was browsing through the Churches Conservation Trust website, I came across county lists of church, and again you can download them in PDF form. I've done two. Somerset, which by coincidence I picked up the hard copy leaflet of this morning, and also Wiltshire, and I thought, put in Wiltshire. On my Imber ride, a few videos down from here, I did say that I had an idea of maybe riding the Wiltshire Cycleway in August to coincide with Parish plus Parish, just so I don't get that fear of missing out, because a lot of my friends will be over there doing it and it'll be all over the internet, and, will I sort of feel a little bit envious or regret not doing it? And so I thought, maybe I'll ride the Wiltshire Cycleway. Then when I saw that, I thought, I wonder if I could incorporate that into the Wiltshire Cycleway, or maybe even make a route which would be my own Wiltshire Cycleway, a Wiltshire Churchway. And I thought, okay, let's see. The Wiltshire Cycleway is about 165 miles long, 185, if I get onto it from my house. I thought, I wonder what it'd be, 40, 50. Turns out it's 212 miles. And that's if I start and finish at Trowbridge Railway Station. Well, when I start at Trowbridge Railway Station. So you can probably get the picture. I've actually looked into riding it over about 4 days. So I'll take a bivvy, hopefully, and bivvy overnight, not sure where, and just ride around and explore the churches. And I thought I ought to do a trial run today just to sort of see, is that going to keep me motivated and occupied enough, or will after 3 or 4 churches the novelty wear off? Because there's 21 in Wiltshire, but I could only really map 20 of them, because one of them, Imber, is the access across Imber Ranges. It's MOD land, and it's very rare they let you go across there, so I haven't included that. So the 20 Wiltshire churches, I thought, would I start losing interest after 4 or 5? Well, I don't think so, because today's just filled me with joy, actually. I'm visiting ones I've been to before, like today, but I'm seeing them in different conditions. I'm discovered that one at Clutton, which I must have ridden by it so many times and not even clocked it was there. Other ones that I've ridden by and fancied going in, so I haven't got bored at all, and I'm really looking forward to my next stop, actually. So yeah, that's the plan, really. Hopefully during the week of PBP I'm going to ride around the Churches Conservation Trust, 20 of their Wiltshire 21 churches, starting and finishing at Chelwood railway station. So I'm going to leave here now, as I've described, go back past the village green, past the pub, head out the way I came into the village, but instead of dropping down to Cameley, I'll be bearing round to the left, dropping down to Bishop Sutton, a little bit on the main road, a few hundred yards, then it's going to be minor roads all the way to my final destination. I'll see you somewhere between here and there. As I've been saying all morning, I'm following somebody else's route, and I'm happy to go where they send me. But a couple of times I thought, I wonder if you could do this to miss out a little bit of main road, and this is one of them. And I suddenly realised while she's coming around this way, you pass through 2 wonderful fords. Even at this time you can sort of see there's a lot of water passing through. This one I've just actually ridden through rather than walked through the mud, but the previous one back there I walked over the little causeway rather than the risking slipping off in that. But yeah, this bit is absolutely fantastic. Once again, it's quite nice getting forced out your normal routine, thinking, I can avoid that bit of main road by going up there, turning there. And I'm glad I didn't today, because I forgot about how lovely these fords are, actually. I'm dropping down on Bromley Road towards my final destination, Stanton Drew. This is a fairly significant point. So another one of my dog legs. This is Upper Stanton Drew. I'm dropping down into the village of Lower Stanton Drew. That's where the pub is, and the church, and the standing stones. Then another dog leg, I'll be coming back up here and along there, as you can see, towards Pensford, where the viaduct is. I'll be riding right underneath the viaduct, and then finishing on the A37, well, just over the A37, where the route starts and finishes by that 19th century lock-up stroke village hall car park. Anyway, first off, I'm hoping I can get down there while the pub's still open. So I've dropped down through the village. The Druids Arms pub's just round the corner. It looks like an old chapel there. Then look to the Parish church. Old wall-mounted postbox, Georgian. Oh, stone circles. There's the back of the church. Right, let's wander along there. You start to think you've missed the route, actually. You come down past these bungalows, and here it is. Here, look. There's the collection box. So I didn't realise until I just read that board that there's actually 3 stone circles there. So it said the scale of them's bigger than it appears from the road. A lot of people here today. Well, I suppose it's a bank holiday. To give you an idea of the geography, running down that way would have been the road I was taking into the village, and then you won't see it from here, but that straight line of almost hedgerow there, behind that would be the River Chew. Then you climb up to that B road that goes along there. There's a little garage up there just to the left of it. You can't quite make it out here. There's a thatched toll house, which is quite a well-known local landmark. Might be able to give you a zoom in shot of that thatched toll house now, right in the centre of the shot now. Get a really idea of how lush and fertile this Chew Valley is. I got to say, I'm glad I've come to have a look at them close up, and I'm actually quite genuinely surprised how big the circles are. And I didn't realise there were 3, one main one and 2 arterial ones, but to be honest, stone circles don't really do a lot for me. The churches, as soon as I walk through the door, it just sets off a whole range of senses and emotions and all that, so that's where my heart is really taking me towards now, at church. So I've just retraced from the circles, turn right, and here we are within a few yards, St Mary the Virgin Church. Nice bit of shade in there out the sun and the glare. Well, that's quite good to get out the sun and the glare. Looks like it might be open. Oh, it'd be good if it is. So my 6th church today. That's interesting. It looks like you come in underneath the tower. It says here, to the glory of God in the new millennium, the tower clock was restored and set to work at midnight on the 31st of December 1999 from funds raised by the parishioners of Stanton Drew. Gosh, that takes me all back to the Millennium Bug and things like that. Where I can tell you exactly where I was at that moment in time, I was camped at Nepnit Thrubwell, which is overlooking Blagdon Lake, not far from here actually. I did a wild winter camp. I just wanted to be away from all the hoo-ha and everything, you know, people talking about planes falling out of the skies, computers crashing, cost you 50 quid just to get into a pub and they'd be crowded. I just wanted to stay away from all that. And I found this spot, what I thought was miles from anywhere. There's a couple of farmhouses nearby. And I just got there about 3, 4 o'clock in the winter, last day of December, you know, soon after the solstice. Put my tent up and just had a pocket radio in those days. And there was nothing but the millennium on the news. And of course, on the hour, every hour, different parts of the world were going into the new millennium. So you had to sort of build up to it. And bang on midnight, I'd taken a firework out there, just one rocket, because I just thought, I'm in the middle of nowhere, I want to put a rocket up. And as mine went up, I lit the fuse, went off bang on midnight, and rockets galore all round me started going up, and it went on for about 45 minutes. I didn't realise there was so many dwellings near where I was. And I was like in the middle of a firework display, even though I was camped in a field by myself. That was a bit strange. This is nice. Brass plaques there. Very light in here. There's a lady tending to the church. Amazing. Usual glance up. See all the wooden beams. First person signing the visitors book today. Food bank. I'll just go and get some money. I have actually got £1 left, I've just discovered, so I'll go and add that to the collection box. The CCT guide says these stones in the pub garden are known as the Cove. There's an explainer here. These 3 stones form a prehistoric monument known as the Cove. Ritual ceremonies probably took place here about 4,500 years ago. Nice art. There's a nice artist impression of the stones before it's a beer garden and the church. Fantastic way to finish this little circuit in a beer garden, looking up at the 6th church on the itinerary. So the church I've just been in was the last, the 6th one. It should have been the 5th if I'd done it in order, but I wanted to go to Pensford first, so I didn't go to the final church smelling of alcohol. So the first one was at Publow by the river. Then I joined the circuit proper at Pensford, crossed over the A37. I'll be finishing the route that way. Then I rode up that lane parallel to the A37, joined the A37 a bit, detoured towards Bath to the Thankful Village, which I can't remember what it's called now, and then got onto lanes that dropped me down to Clutton, where I came out by the Railway Inn or the Railway Tavern. There was that green with the King's Oak. Then there was a church there. Then I carried on up to the A37 where the 2 traffic lights were, crossed it, and then there was Cameley. I had my lunch, Cameley. Then I rode up to Hinton Blewitt, past the church first, went to Prospect Star, came back to have a look at the church, and now I've dropped back down here. So this will be the 6th one. It's been a cracking little route this actually, and I've still got a really good bit to do. You know, I'm going to backtrack back up the hill there, take the left, it'll be right as I came down, but it'll be left as I go back up, finishing this dog leg. Then I'll finish passing right underneath that really impressive viaduct at Pensford. Then I'll stop and probably wrap the video up pretty much where I started. I reluctantly left that beer garden. I could have easily stayed there for a couple more. So I traced back up to the way I came in, up the hill, and then took a left-hand turn. It was right on the way down, left on the way back, and now I'm approaching the end of my circuit. It's a fairly good indication of what I'm going to do. That's Pensford Viaduct. I'm going to drop down, go right underneath it, and all those orange roofs and houses, that's Pensford. So that's the start stroke finish of this circuit. I'm just about to pass underneath Pensford Viaduct, so this probably gives you a bit of scale actually. It's cutting across the valley. I've been crisscrossing the old railway all day actually, you know, cuttings, bridges, references like Station Road, the Railway Inn, that sort of thing. Just think that could have been yours for £1 back in the 1990s. As I sort of said, there massive liabilities. I mean, look at those downpipes there. That must gather so much water and take so much maintenance, but wow, what a feat of engineering. Here we are back at the point of the start finish of the circuit. There's a viaduct I've just passed underneath, across the busy A37, and that's the way I'm heading back to Bath. That's the way I come in this morning. So I pretty much started the circuit there by the 19th century lockup, and then I took this road up past a pub there, and this runs up parallel to the A37 and then joins it, and you just have to do about a quarter of a mile or so on that, and then you do the big circuit and finish there. As I've said in the pub garden, I wanted to go to Pensford Church first, even though that should have been the final one. I wanted to go there second because I didn't really want to go in there now, having just had a beer. So this is absolutely a cracking route. I would thoroughly recommend this. How I'd put this in context is, I know all these roads. No road I've ridden on this morning is unfamiliar to me. Some of the places I've been by, I am familiar with, but I learnt new things. I saw them in a different light. But as I've tried to describe before, rather than chasing achievements, I love experiences and I love learning new things as well. And I can learn things on my own doorstep. And one of the ways I do that, I've discovered over the last few years, is just to give my rides a bit of a theme. It just gives it that extra dimension, rather than just riding miles aimlessly, mindlessly, which I actually quite enjoy, to be honest. But it's also nice to have a theme. And today's been a fantastic theme, and it's confirmed that I do want to do that long ride around Wiltshire that I discussed earlier in the video, where, you know, I'm probably going to ride it the week of Parish, and, you know, a tour of Wiltshire, 4 days. A tour of Wiltshire, 4 days, 212 miles. I'll probably be bivvying 3 nights on that. Get a train to and from the start. I mean, it's the county that I live next to. It's only about 12 miles away to start. It just shows you can have a tour and an adventure on your own doorstep. If you've got this far, thanks so much for coming along with me. Hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. The next few videos are going to be like historically themed, Roman roads, and churches and thankful villagers. In the meantime, I hope you're having or had a fantastic Easter. See you soon.